I'm Eva, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of The Charm of It, a podcast for knitters who share my fascination with the nitty-gritty details of our craft. Thistle, my puppy co-host, is in my lap, and Moth is currently staring at me, so she might come and make an appearance. She's my cat for new viewers. If you're a returning viewer, it is so nice to see you again. And if you are a new viewer, I'm glad you found my little corner of the internet. I record 2 different kinds of episodes, and today's is going to be a progress snapshot, which just means I'll be talking about all my works in progress. So, apologies for the wet hair. It is really hot and humid today, and I have to turn the fans off to record, so I just thought it would be nicer to have a little help from evaporative cooling instead of dry hair. And my neck and shoulders are giving me problems. For new viewers, I have chronic illnesses. So I'm not going to be able to raise the projects up really close to the camera today, but hopefully that doesn't matter. I am not wearing any knitwear because it is insanely hot and humid. Sorry. Something in my eye. However, I realized that I could just use a shawl to cover my computer screen instead of the awkward pillow setup. So that is my Kingfisher shawl, which was knit with a free nitty pattern out of Quince & Company Osprey, which is an air and weight yarn, in their colorway Peacock. So you can find the details on my project page if you are interested. I knit it in like January, so you'll have to scroll back a little. Moth has come and joined us. Let's see if they'll both fix. It's not hot enough until you've got 2 little mammals on your lap. I have 5 projects to share with you today. Usually I only do 4 works in progress at a time. However, because I like to rotate between them, and more than 4 just makes me feel overwhelmed. Sorry, I've got both the pets in my lap, so anyway. However, I wanted to go ahead and knit up a little gift to include in the package when I mail my sister's sweaters, so I've put other stuff on hold and I'm working on that. So I will show you this first. They are a pair of, they have several names. Cuffs, pulse warmers is my favorite. They're not really a fingerless mitt because they don't have a thumb gusset or anything. They're kind of smaller than that. And I knit myself a pair of these, which I showed a couple episodes ago. And I haven't been able to wear them much because it's summer here. However, I was able to wear them one day, and I really liked how they functioned. So then the other day on Instagram, Retro Sewer, I believe that's her username, told me about this article where scientists they divided a group of people who all had chronic lower back pain into 2 groups. The control group and then the experimental group wore woolen underwear. This was in Turkey, so I'm not sure what woolen underwear means in Turkey. Anyway, for I think 2 months, and they experienced significant decreases in pain and increases in what they could do. So I am planning to knit myself a pair of woolen underwear to see if it helps my lower back pain. But in the meantime, my sister also has chronic illnesses, and one of her major pain points is in her wrists. So I texted her and asked if she would want to try some little cuffs. My sister is very sensitive to wool, and she also lives in South Texas, which is not really a woolly climate. So I knit these in a lace weight yarn. It's left over from a pair of mitts I knit her for her birthday 2 years ago, I believe, and she picked out the yarn herself when I was home over Christmas, so I knew it wouldn't itch her. The company is Mirasol Yarn, and the brand the specific name is Nuna Fina. It's 40% wool, 40% silk, and 20% rayon. And this really pretty purple colorway is called Midnight. I can't hold projects up to the camera today because my neck and shoulders are causing me problems. I might have already said that. I had to stop and re-record because the pets were, anyway, it doesn't matter. So apologies for redundancy, but as you can see, I have finished the first one, and I used the same pattern. I haven't blocked it yet. That's why the lace doesn't look open and frilly. Basically, in order to account for lace weight yarn, and I'm knitting these on size 00s to get a nice snug fabric. I love knitting lace weight on very fine needles. It makes me really long to be knitting another lace weight sweater. I haven't because I had a couple scarf quantities of lace weight yarn in my stash, and I thought it would make more sense to knit those first. before letting myself buy a sweater's quantity again. But now I've knit both those scarves, so hopefully I'll be able to start a lace weight sweater fairly soon. Back to these little cuffs. So I cast on 90 stitches instead of the pattern calls for 70, and then I decreased to 60 for the wrist. And as you can see, it's plenty stretchy. The other funny thing is, so I cast on the 90 stitches on my little steel double point, or double zeros. I wish that I could find double zeros and triple zeros, which, sorry, double zero is metric 1.75 in any material other than stainless steel, because I really don't like how this material operates. Anyway, I cast on the 90 stitches, and then I looked at them, and I imagined distributing them around 4 needles to knit in the round. And I decided it would be simpler to just knit them flat and seam them later, because this little lace section doesn't last very long, and then it's just 2x2 ribbing, which is the same flat or in the round. So that's what I did, and sure enough, it was very pleasant, and yeah, simple to seam. The only other change I made was I worked the pattern. It's a free pattern. Calls for you to knit basically 12 rows of the lace chart, and I did 16 rows just to add it a little longer. And then I switched to 2x2 rib. I'm pretty sure the pattern has you do something else, but I like 2x2 rib for those kinds of functional stretchy things, so that's how I made my mitts as well. And I will include all that information in my project notes. But as you can see, I'm almost done with the second one. I have 12 more rows, and I've promised myself I'm getting to the post office either tomorrow or Monday, because I do have to block these. And even though they're lace weight, which usually dries really quickly, it's so humid right now that they might not be dry for tomorrow. And in that case, I will go on Monday. But yeah, so. And I hope that she likes them. I'm sure she will. I hope they help her wrist pain. That's really what I hope. Thistle, what you doing over there? Thistle is having a bit of a naughty day. Anyway, let's see. I guess I'll show you a project you've already seen before. These are the sleeves for my Soda Shop cardigan. So, yeah? Yes. Which I'm designing myself. It's kind of a retro-inspired mid-century American thing. And I've already knit the body, and I have knit one of the sleeves, so now I'm just working on the second. As you can probably see, I decided not to go with flex. I was just really worried about all the ends with worsted weight yarn. That would be basically 2 ends at the seam line, because it's worked in the round, for each row of flex. And that just seemed to me that it might be a little uncomfortable. Opinions seemed divided. About half of the people thought I should continue the flex, and the other half thought it would be too busy. So I decided to knit them plain, and I will seam the sweater up and see whether I feel that it needs flex or not, and then if it still needs flex, I will go ahead and duplicate stitch them in. I did opt for the corrugated rib with the triple braid cast on, just like the bottom of the sweater for the cuffs, and I'm really glad I did that. I decided it would be nicer to have this than a reversible cuff. It's so thick and comfy and pretty that I think that'll be fine. I did finish this sleeve, but when I tried it on, I'm not going to try it on for you now because this is worsted weight yarn and it's just too hot. Anyway, the sleeve cap was a little shorter than I expected, and so I might rip it back and just add a few more rounds to the length, because I want to be able to pull this cuff down over my hands, since this is going to be a sweatshirt style sweater. So what I'm going to do is knit the second one a little longer than I knit the first one. My progress keeper is marking where I did the last set of increases so that it's a little easier to count. And then see if I like that length better and go back and add it to this one. Sleeve caps really don't take that long in worsted weight yarn, so having to rip that back isn't a big deal at all. Although I will have to add more yarn. The yarn is Quince & Company Lark, which is their worsted weight 100% American wool. And I really love it. I have already used this bird egg is the blue color, to knit another sweater that I wore a few times but not enough, so then I ripped it out and washed the yarn and reskeined it up, and I'm knitting with it again, and it still looks great to me. The two contrast colors are maple and canvas, respectively. And yeah, I love how squishy it is, and I'm really looking forward to being able to wear it once the weather cools off. I'm entering this in Stacy from Twisted Threads Summer Sweater Along, where the idea is just to encourage you to knit the sweaters you want to wear in the fall now, even though it's really hot and humid. Without her, I probably wouldn't have cast on for a worsted weight sweater, but I'm really glad that I did. So especially now that I'm at the sleeves, so it's not a big amount of sweater in my lap. And yeah, that's that. I'm excited. I almost forgot to mention, I spaced the decreases, or the increases, because I do bottom up, out a little further on this sleeve. Usually when I'm knitting a fingering weight sweater, I'll do the increases every 8 to 10 stitch rounds. A little spacey today. And this is a worsted weight sweater, but I decided to do the increases every 7 rounds. I can't remember why. I'm sure there was a reason. And I actually really like that slower increase rate. It reflects my arm a little better. My wrists and forearms are pretty small, and then my biceps have more heft to them. I know some of you are laughing right now at that comment. But proportionally, my biceps are like a size larger than my torso, which I know from trying to buy short-sleeved blouses for retail. So at least according to retailers, my biceps are on the heftier side. Anyway, so I'm definitely going to slow down my increase rate when I do fingering weight sweaters. I'll probably do every 10 to 11 rounds instead of 8. A lot of times I just pick a multiple that works with whatever stitch pattern I'm doing. In this case, it was stockinette, so I didn't need a multiple, but that's usually what I do to make it easier on myself so that it's just simpler to remember to do the increases. And I also decided to see whether doing mirrored increases really mattered in a sleeve. I can't put it closer to the camera so you can't see, but I've decided that this isn't bad, but it doesn't look quite as good. So I will definitely be continuing mirrored increases in the future, just because I think it looks a bit neater. Of course, this is unblocked. And yeah, I love sleeve knitting. It makes me very happy. It's basically sock knitting, but without the heel flap. So I'm always excited when I get to the sleeve point of a sweater. However, I will admit that right now, almost all my works and projects have suddenly gotten to a stage where they're all really simple. And I like having 1 or 2 really simple ones for knitting while I'm reading. But I also like having 1 or 2 complicated ones, so it's making me a little twitchy that everything is super simple right now. But there are a couple things that'll be off my needle shortly, and then I'll be able to cast on something more complicated. So the other gift, well, one of the other gifts that I'm knitting right now are a pair of socks for my mom. These will look familiar if you watch my last episode because they're pretty much identical to the socks I knit for my aunt, except they're much longer. And the contrast toes and heels are Knit Picks Comfy Fingering, which is a cotton acrylic blend in Seafoam. The cuff is the same yarn in Blackberry, and then this main stripey bit is Felici, which is a merino wool that is self-striping in Captain Nemo. And this is a toe-up vanilla sock. The reason why these are much longer than my aunt's is because my mom said she didn't care if the stripes matched, so I just started at the beginning of the ball, and then the way that my aunt's socks worked out, I ended up only being able to use 38 grams of her skein of Felici, so I had 12 extra grams to work with. And my mom and aunt both have very small feet, so that's why I knew that with contrast toes and heels and cuffs, I would be able to get a pair of socks out of 150 gram ball each. My mom has gotten really into taller socks lately. She wants me to knit her pair of knee highs. So she's excited about the extra length on these. They're not quite knee highs, but they're still pretty tall. So the difference is compared to my aunt's is that I did a whirlwind toe. I keep calling this a star toe, but it's actually whirlwind, and the link to that will be on the project page if you're interested. Because my mom has round feet like I do, and I really liked how this toe worked. I tried it out on my last pair of toe-up socks. My aunt has very tapered feet. And then I just used my zeros. I didn't go down to double zeros for the sole, so I don't have my aunt's, but so these are wider. My mom wears a size 5.5 regular. My aunt wears a 7 narrow, which means her feet are more narrow than my mom's actually, but they're also longer. So I started the heel a little bit earlier for my mom's socks, and it's a Fish Lips Kiss heel. I knit this on size 0 as well, and I increased to 30 stitches. I'm knitting the main sock on 54, which is 2 stitches less than my socks because I wear a size 6.5 to 7. And so according to my size chart, my mom's feet are 1/4 of an inch smaller than mine, which is what, 6 millimeters? So 2 stitches seemed the way to go with that. So I increased to 30 for the heel so that it would be deeper, and then I work the short rows until I have 8 stitches left in the middle. Other things. The cuff is 1x1 twisted rib with the invisible sewn bind off, which is my favorite combination for toe-up socks. It looks really neat, but it's also really stretchy. It looks a lot like a tubular bind off. It just functions much more stretchily. Pretty sure stretchily is not an English word. And yeah, so I'm trying to get these done so that I can go to the post office as well. And for the second sock, I have done, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stripes. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 stripes before the cuff. So, yeah, I'm getting there. Because of my neck and shoulder pain, I haven't really been able to knit much for the last couple days, which means that this project has become a little bit stressful, but that's just because I'm artificially imposing this post office deadline on myself, and both my mother and sister don't want me to hurt myself knitting for them. So I gave myself a stern talking to last night and have calmed down about the whole situation. I will admit that knitting pretty much the same sock twice in a row is a little dull, especially since I've also got plain stockinette sleeves going, so it feels like a little too much plain knitting. And after this, I'm going to take a little break from gift sock knitting because the idea of casting on for my father's socks makes me like this instead of happy, which is what I usually am with sock knitting. So I'm going to take a little break, and then I will return with renewed excitement and enthusiasm for gift sock knitting. I mean, this will be the 3rd pair of socks that I've knit for other people in, I don't know, 3 weeks. So, yeah. This is one of my major, this summer is one of my major gift knitting times because a lot of my friends and family live in South Texas and are sensitive to wool, so they prefer plant fibers in their knitted objects, and I prefer to knit with plant fibers when it's hot out versus cold. Oops. I'm sorry that my energy level is not super high today. I'm not feeling well. I'm in a flare-up. That's why my neck and shoulders are also acting up. So, but I'm trying to record anyway and stick to my weekly schedule as much as I can. Just, I don't know. It's nice to have anchors in your life, you know. Okay, so 2 more things. First up is my Rosemary and Roost stole, which is a, all the yarn's tangled. I'm alternating skeins. Oops, I'm sorry, Moth. Moth is in my lap, and I totally just hit her in the face with the scarf. I had to take a quick break for kitty soothing. But now we are back, and I can show you that it has gotten quite long. And I have finished, the pattern is divided into sections. It's also knit on the bias, so that's why it looks like that right now. And I have finished the first section, which was repeats of this lace chart. And now I'm on to the second section. It was very exciting for me. Well, actually the third. There was a transitional section, but the second big section. It was very exciting for me to kind of hit that milestone. With sweater knitting, you have so many different pieces. Well, the way that I knit sweaters. And so there's kind of natural stopping points, and then you're doing something new with the new piece. And I really like that. I think it contributes to my enjoyment of knitting sweaters. Whereas a lot of times when you're knitting something like a scarf, you're just knitting the same thing over and over, and even the most enjoyable charts tend to get a little tedious once you've knit them a lot. For me, they tend to get tedious. So it's really nice to have some variety, and I expect this section will go quite quickly because as you can see, it's much simpler than this. That's what I meant about suddenly all of my projects have gotten to a simple point. And so these are the leaf section and these are the branches. And this is the understoried scarf and wrap pattern by my friend Erin. It's a paid for pattern, and I think it's really worth it because it's a beautiful pattern. It's easy to follow. It comes in 2 sizes and she gives you suggestions for resizing. I cast on 14 fewer stitches than the stole size because I had a little less yarn to work with. And it includes lots of helpful tips and extras if you want them. So definitely good value for money if you're used to buying patterns. I'm alternating skeins, as I mentioned, and last time I said that I was following a cool tip from Erin, and I wasn't sure if it was public knowledge or if it was just for if you bought the pattern, and she said it's fine to talk about it and that the resources page where I found it is actually public on her website. So basically, every time, so there's a 2-stitch garter border, and for the first row, when I do the new yarn, which is a wrong side row, I knit one, then I do a yarn over, then I knit one, and then on the row back, I just drop that yarn over. And I've seen that done for scarves just to make both edges neater, but I hadn't seen it done to help make sure that alternating 2 skeins doesn't lead to any tension issues just along that edge. So, in case I'm new to alternating skeins, I don't know, this might be common knowledge. This is only the second project I've done it on. And the first one I definitely struggled with keeping my tension loose enough that I knew it would block well, but not so loose that it looked like a giant gaping mess. And this way, all the thinking is done for me, and I can just pull it as snug as I want. The yarn is Bartlett yarn, Barrett yarn. I'm going to do it every time. Which is Susan B. Anthony's yarn company. It's the Wisconsin Woolen Spun Fingering out of merino Corriedale wool entirely from U.S. sheep, and then it's spun and dyed in Wisconsin. She doesn't name the mill, but I'm pretty sure it's Blackberry Ridge, which also sell their own yarn, in case you're interested. The colorway is bay leaf, but I over-dyed it with Kool-Aid and Wilton's icing, so it's cooler and darker, and it has some splotchy bits from my mistakes with the overdying that would not be there in the original bay leaf colorway. So yeah, I'm really pleased with how this is working up. It's so nice to work with woolen spun yarn and more rustic, local kind of yarns. This is certainly soft enough for me to wear around my neck. I don't know yet if it would be soft enough in a sweater. It's definitely one of the reasons why I decided to use this yarn for a scarf was so that I can test it out for its sweater potential because it has some really nice grays. Merino, I never have problems wearing merino, but Corriedale is not quite as fine as merino, so that's the only thing that might give me problems. I will report back when it's not super hot and humid, which makes any kind of wool bother my skin. Yeah, so I can't wait to be able to wear this in the fall. I think it's going to go with a lot of outfits and coats and that kind of thing, and I'm just happily knitting along. I do have 1 stitch marker, and that's just because since it's knit on the bias, you're always increasing on one side and decreasing on another side. And especially in the leaf lace, I found that I kept not realizing that I was towards the very end of the chart where I had to do something different for being on the bias. And so the stitch marker just tells me when the regular repeats of the charts end and when that final section begins. And right now, this section, I don't need to look at the chart to know what to do for the rows. But the chart, it's still charted out in quite a few rows in order to show you how the bias shaping is working. And so right now the stitch marker is letting me easily count how many stitches I have left towards this end, and that way I'll know when I have finished 1 repeat. So that is why that is there. And yeah, all the wrong side rows are purl rows, which is very nice. And if you would like to win a copy of this pattern, there is a giveaway thread in the group on Ravelry right now, and the link to that will be down in the show notes. And as I said, I thoroughly recommend it, even though I am friends with Erin. I promise I would not tell you that I liked the pattern if I didn't. Instead, I just would not have bought it and knit it myself. So the final project is yet another gift knit. This is the Sailing the Seas dress, and it is a baby dress. I've been wanting to knit this pattern, which is the Clara dress, since I saw it on Stitched in Sweden, which is hosted by Maria. She knit one a couple of years ago, probably at this point, and I just thought it was so sweet, but no one I knew was having a baby girl. And luckily, one of my friends had a baby girl in April, and I mailed, like, you know, an immediate newborn gift. I knit a little soft lamb, and then I sent that with a board book and a note saying that I would knit a little dress for her come summer. So that is what I'm doing. The yarn is Rowan Summerlight 4-ply, which is 100% cotton, fingering weight, in the aqua colorway, which is this really beautiful blue, and that's what I named the dress for. I had wanted to get an organic cotton. I don't usually buy conventionally grown cotton, like, at all in my life. But gift knitting is the exception, because my sister's sweater is a silk cotton blend, and that cotton, I have no clue how it's grown. I even emailed the company to ask, because I liked that yarn, and I would have liked to buy more of it for sweaters for myself, but I won't, because I don't know where the cotton comes from. However, I was shopping for this with my mom when I was home for Christmas. I tend to bring her along when I'm shopping for baby yarn, because I am very liberal about gender things, and I'm often knitting baby gifts for people who are less liberal than me, and my mother is also less liberal than me, so I like to get her opinion about colors. Because I don't believe in gendered colors. So that is one. And so my local yarn store, all of their fingering weight cotton, none of it was organic. And I've noticed that even looking online, I've done some searching and browsing, and it seems like almost all the organic, or in Quince's case, they have cleaner cotton, which is at least, anyway, you can see it on their website if you're interested. So all of what I would call the less environmentally destructive cotton seems to be at either a heavier weight, not fingering weight, or it's mixed with an animal fiber. So, yeah, that seems really weird to me. If you're knitting with plant-based fibers, you're probably wanting lighter weight garments, and fingering weight is going to get you a lighter garment. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. If you know of any good organic or otherwise thoughtfully grown fingering weight yarn, please let me know. The only one I found is Biocessia, which I found on webs. I can't remember what company makes it, though. So I might give that a go. Oh, and then, of course, the comfy fingering weight from Knit Picks that I'm using is also not organic. So, yeah, I seem to have different standards for gifts than I do for my own things. I mean, like, even my bed sheets and stuff are always organic cotton. That's why I only have one set, because, of course, organic cotton is pricier. Anyway, so I just have to wash them and dry them and then put them back on the bed right away. So I'm not sure why I always relax my standards when I'm gift knitting, but it's just something I do. Oops. I like to talk about those kinds of issues just because I don't want to seem, I don't know, like I'm a paragon, or that things are always black and white and hard and fast. There's a lot of gray. So once again, this is yarn that I wouldn't use to knit for myself, but I really like how it's knitting up. It's a very pretty blue color, and it's making a really nice and slinky fabric. So yeah, please let me know if you have any cotton recommendations for me that are fingering weight. That's why I knit my sweaters summer sweaters out of linen from Quince & Company, which I would have bought even if it's not organic. It is organic, but linen is a much less water-heavy, pesticide-heavy crop than cotton is. I should probably mention, I assume everyone always knows this. So the environmental problems with cotton are the pesticides and the water use. And then there's also a lot of social problems with cotton. For instance, in Uzbekistan, until a few years ago, the government basically forced all of its citizens, including children, to go work in the cotton fields during harvest time so that everything could get picked. So that was essentially slave labor. And right now in India, there's a lot of problems with their farming communities and farmers feeling very desperate, and the suicide rate is quite high, and India is a major source of cotton. So yeah, there's just a lot of social ramifications as well as environmental ones with cotton. And I sidestepped that for most of my clothing by buying secondhand. And then the things that I have to buy retail, like my underwear, are organic cotton, and that can be really difficult on a budget. It took me almost 2 years to find organic cotton underwear that I could afford, and I got really lucky on a Black Friday sale, so I went crazy and bought 30 pairs so that I would not have to do another search for a really long time. Anyway, that was probably too much information, but that is why I am hesitant to buy conventional cotton for myself, and that's also one of the reasons why I don't think I'm ever going to get really into sewing, because the only fabric I'll buy to sew with, if I'm using cotton, is organic cotton, which is pricier. And that means that as a beginning sewist, if I don't like how a project turns out, or if I make a mistake, or even just making a muslin is quite an expensive undertaking. And since I buy most of my clothes secondhand, for me to buy a dress secondhand costs, I don't know, between $10 and $30. And since I like dresses with poofy skirts, that requires 2 to 3 yards of fabric, so that's like $30 to $45 of organic cotton fabric right there, even before you start the sewing process. So that, to me, is one of the barriers to why I will probably never be a super enthusiastic sewer. And as always, when I'm talking about these kinds of issues, these are just my personal decisions that I've come to, and that does not mean that I am secretly judging everyone who buys conventionally grown cotton. I'm not. Wow, this is a really long tangent. Let's get back to the knitting, shall we? If you look at the Clara dress on Ravelry, it's kind of confusing because there's both a paid-for pattern that is available only as a kit with the yarn that you have to mail order, but there's also a free pattern of it that's in public domain. And apparently this is a very traditional dress style in Scandinavia, and so I'm using the free public domain pattern. And the link to that, as well as a lot of incredibly helpful suggestions of modifications, is on the project of this one knitter, and it will be linked in my project page. But her username is Rabbits, F-Rabbits. And yeah, so I'm very grateful that she has assembled all this information in one place. So for the skirt, the bottom bit, the lace bit, and the seed stitch bit, I followed her modifications, basically cast on an odd number instead of an even for this band so that the seed stitch can go uninterrupted. And then, yeah, and then for this part of the lace, instead of doing knit 2 together through the back loop, do SSK, which is the usual decrease I do anyway, so I've done those 2 modifications. Once I got to the body, the dress has columns of yarn overs. I really wish I could get closer to the camera, I'm sorry. The dress has columns of yarn overs that go up it. And I think those are really pretty. However, this is a dress for a little girl who lives in South Texas, and so most of the year she'll be wearing it just as a dress, not as a layering piece. And in that case, I felt that having a bunch of yarn overs going up the dress would make it a little see-through. I know that if I were a mother and my baby's diaper could be seen through clothing, that would mean that another layer needed to go on underneath. So instead of doing a row of yarn overs, I'm doing a line of seed stitch for each of those, and I got that idea from a pair of mitts that I knit with a free pattern called HG, and they're the most beautiful mitts. I love them. They make me so happy. I should probably knit that pattern again in another color because it's just, I love it. But that one has a similar kind of triangular lace pattern and then the seed stitch going up, and it's really lovely. So I thought that would be a nice alternative for this. I haven't decided yet. This pattern has a very lacy yoke, and I think what I'm going to do is instead of doing conventional yarn overs, I'm going to not do any yarn overs on the yarn over round, and then in the next round, go underneath and knit into that bar. So it'll create a yarn over, but it'll create a hole, but it will be smaller than if I had done a yarn over. I'll talk about that more when I get to the yoke, but that's what I'm currently thinking, because that way it won't be very open, and she should still be able to wear it as a single layer. I'm knitting the larger size because the other user who I found very helpful, her username is NAYLLIJ, and as always, this will be linked on the project page. She has knit this in multiple sizes, and she also has several little girls. And so she knit the larger size of this pattern, and she tried it on, I think, her 12-month-old, her 2-year-old, and her 4-year-old. And it fit all three. It just fit as a dress for the littlest one, a tunic for the middle one, and as a shirt for the bigger one. And I think that would be wonderful if my friend could get that many years of wear out of this dress. And since it's cotton, she'll be able to wash it and dry it in the machine, which will hopefully prolong its longevity. So because of that, I decided to knit the larger size. So hopefully it will last longer. Her first baby, a little boy, he grew really fast. So I'm not sure if her daughter will also grow as quickly. Let's see, she was born in April, so she's now about 4 months old. So knitting the larger size, it should start to fit her. I don't know, at least what I'm saying is I don't have to worry about it being way too small before I send it to her. The sort of funny thing about that is, so the pattern calls for a gauge of 6 stitches to the inch. And for the larger size, you cast on 240 stitches. That's a 40-inch circumference. What is that in centimeters? 40. 40 centimeters? No, I'm wrong. It's way more than that, sorry. Let's see, 40 inches is going to be 90 centimeters plus 10, 100 centimeters around, I think. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't record during flare-ups. It's over a yard, so yeah, about a meter. And that's really funny because when I knit sweaters for myself, I knit very fitted cropped cardigans, and so I start out so at no point have any of my sweaters gotten to 40 inches around. That's basically what I'm saying, is it's quite amusing that I'm doing this baby knit and it turns out to require more stitches than any garments that I've made for me. And I worked out the area because I'll be knitting to about 10 inches in length, which is a little more than the pattern calls for, but it's what the mom of all those girls did. And I'm just following her lead. And that's also the length that I knit my crop sweaters before I start the yoke. And of course my yoke is going to be longer, and this dress is pretty much sleeveless, so it doesn't have long sleeves. But essentially, it's a much more square inches, if that makes sense. So this dress is going to be 400 square inches right before you get to the yoke, because 40 times 10. And my cardigans, because I do waist shaping, they turn out to be more of a trapezoid, but it works out to 275 square inches. So that's a pretty big difference. And it's just very amusing to me that I was thinking of this as like a small little knit, and then it turns out it's not going to be that far off like a vest for myself. Probably the same. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm knitting it on Lykke. thank you to the very helpful commentator who told me how to pronounce that right. Hopefully I got it. I know it's supposed to be like lyrical, so Lykke. And yeah, let me know if I'm still wrong. And these are size US 1.5, which is 2.5 millimeters. And I had to order these because there was no way I was going to knit 100% cotton yarn. And this is a very slippery cotton on metal needles because I just didn't want it slipping and sliding around. And I decided it was worth the $8 to get another size of the Lykke. And I'm really enjoying knitting with them. I think the smaller size means I don't notice the tip issue so much that I mentioned last time with the other set that I have. And of course, a lot of this involves a lot of stockinette and then simple lace, so I'm not having to do any very complicated manipulations or anything. So yeah, I'm really pleased about it. And the reason why I have all these stitch markers, I didn't actually have them when I was working on the lace, but now that I'm to the point where it's pretty much stockinette, I want to be able to work on it while I'm reading. So there's a stitch marker before each seed stitch column, and that way I know every other row I need to do one purl right after those stitch markers. And then obviously one of them is a different color, so that I know where the round ends or begins, depending on your point of view. And yeah, this project is bringing me a lot of happiness, which is always nice when you're gift knitting. That is everything that I've been working on. As I mentioned, I'm not sure how much I will be able to get done over the next few days with my neck and shoulder problems, but even a little bit is fun, and there's not a huge sense of urgency to anything other than my sister and mom's things, and as I said, they're not going to want me to push myself. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I apologize again for my spaciness and tiredness, but I'm trying to get into a more consistent recording schedule, so I thought that it was worth it to try to push through. And both the pets have really enjoyed the fact that I'm not moving so much, so they are both snug down on the couch. Here is Thistle again, and Moth, who loves to be picked up. There we go. I'm sorry, Moth. She's so funny. She loves to be on laps. She'll spend hours sleeping on me, but only if she's the one who's come around. She does not want to be picked up and moved anywhere, which I certainly can't blame her for. And there's her blue eyes watching to see what those leaves are doing outside the window. It's been so nice spending time with you, and I will see you again soon. Bye. Yeah.